In terms of your own books, going back to the point I was making earlier, murder always at the heart of it. Is that something, is this purely, as it were, an authorial device, or is there something more profound there about death and violence that brings out sharp situations you can work with?
I think we're all fascinated by murder because it's the ultimate crime. And I think the big difference between murder and every other crime is there's no restitution. You can't make it up to somebody you've killed. And there are other crimes that are very destructive, like rape is a crime that destroys people's lives, and they can never be completely better after that. You kill somebody, and that's it. And J. Edgar Hoover made a great comment about that. He said that there's no greater honor and no greater duty an officer can have than to investigate the death of a fellow human being. And I think that does fascinate us, because what is that difference between you and I and Peter and a killer? I mean, hopefully there is a difference. What always fascinates me is when you have a heinous killer. And we don't have that many guys who've got, I'm a serial killer tattooed on their skulls. They're always the nice guys. You know, our most famous serial killer in the UK, Harold Shipman, a nice family doctor who just happened to like killing his patients. And whenever there's a serial killer court, or even just a single murder court, you always have the camera, and there's on a little old lady next door, and she says, he was so sweet, he always used to feed my cat if I was away.
We've got into a very dark area, and talking about serial killers and murder. I think murder is fascinating. The supreme good and evil. It's a narrative that's as old as humanity, and I think that's why people are interested in crime. That juxtaposition: good, evil, good people, bad people. But where I would lean away from what you're saying, and something you said earlier, is this distinction between the criminal and the rest of us. I don't think it's that clear cut. And I think if we look at quite a lot of murder, it's often unintentional. It's panicking people, it's drunken people, it's crazy people. And the idea that lurking amongst us there are hordes of potential serial killers, people dead set on evil, I think that's one of the worrying problems with media and crime fiction to some extent. I think a lot of crime is ambiguously motivated and much messier.
I would agree with that. I mean, we are living in a city which has had the sobriquet murder capital of Europe back in 1932 and crime capital of the UK. And I think right now, this year, we've had more murders than any other city in England except for London. But you're absolutely right, Peter. I mean, most of those killings would appear to be in the category you've described. We don't have that many serial killers, fortunately, in the UK. They're very much a product of America because of its geography, and also because, and I've spent quite a bit of time in my research with police in North America, and our police in the UK are 10 times more efficient and better organized. They don't have cross-border fingerprinting in the US until very recently. You can't have DNA sampling from one state to another because it's an invasion of privacy. They've got all these kind of slightly kind of crazy laws there. And if you are, they have, I think right now, and at any given time, they estimate there's 49 serial killers active in the US. We probably are very unlucky if we have one at any given time.
I think it's also in the States, there's the way in which the American dream and celebrity culture has taken over. Programs like Pop Out, instant stardom. The one thing being a serial killer gets you is an instant dark celebrity. And some people seem to be so desperate on celebrity that by any means possible is their way.
Sorry. And I do think the media, and we've got the Argus sitting there, which paper actually I like a lot because I think it serves the community, and local papers are important. But I think that we have, and if you talk to any mother of a young kid, and she is terrified of letting that kid go out and play on the street, the reality is there were, I think in 1928, more children murdered by somebody not known to the family than in 2010.
We've all got a view of crime, all of us, and an interesting question is where it comes from. It may come from fiction, it may come from the media, and those of you who bought the Argus today, I mean, purely coincidentally, two issues on the front page of the Argus. Armed police surround Army boy Connor, a young lad who'd been dressed up by his grandfather and was holding a ball-bearing gun, and then report of the very serious issue of the search for Gary Hampson. So we get our ideas from fiction, maybe we get our ideas from the media. We probably get less of our ideas from criminologists. How realistic, how influential do you think, Peter, from your perspective, the public view of the media are and crime fiction is informing a view of crime that may or may not be true?
I think it probably plays into an attitude that I referred to already, that we do like to make distinctions between us and the bad guys. We're okay. That sort of almost kind of moral censure that we put around ourselves, that somehow other people aren't like us, they are less controlled, less moral, less reasonable. It's an important distinction, but I think there's a certain amount of fiction about it because people break laws all the time. They drive too fast, they fiddle tax, they make phone calls at work and don't declare them. Not that I do any of that, of course.
Just make a note of that. Yeah.
So I think having constantly reiterated stories about how there are evil people out there and they are responsible for this set of crime and murder that we're concerned about, it does allow us off the hook to some extent. Crime is about other people, it's not really us.
I'll let Peter come in a minute, but do you, when you work with your criminology students, have to spend time getting them away from the popular ideas they come in to say this is the real situation?
Oh, absolutely. I think we began a course in criminology and psychology. I had reservations at one level about that combination. It's going back a bit now, but one had a sense that most of them wanted to be cracker when they left the course. I mean, that shows how long ago this was, really. But of course, there are very few careers in crime profiling, and I began to wonder if they hadn't personally met a serial killer by the end of the first term, whether they would be suing us for false pretenses. But I did want to tell my favourite Argus story, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
I was phoned up by the
Anybody
Argus.
from the Argus here?
I was phoned up by the Argus. This is, how criminology has an influence via the media. I was phoned up by the Argus wanting to know whether I thought that someone who killed animals would ever turn to kill people. There'd been a number of cat killings around parts of Brighton. And I said, no, I don't think so. I don't think there's any evidence on this. And then I said, and this was the fake thing, but one of the risk factors about whether someone will become a criminal and will become violent in adult life is whether they mistreat animals as a child. That was the fatal bit. The following day's Argus said, cat killer may strike at humans next. And there I was in all my glory. So if I've contributed to the misunderstanding of what cat killers go on to become, it's my fault.